Money was the only reason my family ever seemed to listen to me. When I started earning more than my parents, I thought maybe they'd be proud. I was wrong. It just made me useful to them. Every month there'd be a new favor to pay for. Every week someone needing a small loan. I wasn't really allowed to refuse. When I finally said no, that's when everything blew up. Dad called it betrayal. I got one message that shattered 15 years of pretending we were normal. "You're out of this family." My sister? She sent a laughing emoji. So, I just replied, "Then your bills are on you." By midnight, the family chat was a war zone I couldn't walk away from. It started with Dad blowing up the family chat out of nowhere. I didn't even get a warning, just his message. "If you didn't want help, maybe don't ask for it, and then complain." No hello, no anything. Just this blunt, accusing tone that hit like a slap through the screen. I was still half asleep, staring at my phone, and there was Mom, silent. No reply at all. And my sister? She jumped in fast with a string of laughing emojis and a sarcastic, "Well, look who's suddenly the victim." Like, seriously? My sister mocking me during a family fight? I wasn't ready for that. Dad kept going, though. "All we've done is support you. You owe us more respect. Money isn't free." The way he typed it, like a judge handing down a verdict. I felt this tight knot in my chest. Anger, yeah, but underneath it, a quieter ache that's harder to admit. I thought about replying, about defending myself, but every word felt like pouring fuel on a fire. I typed erased. I felt my fingers trembling. Then my sister sent another message, like she was enjoying this. "Maybe next time, think before you ask for cash, little sis." That hurt in a different way, not because of the money, but because in their eyes, I was just this desperate kid, begging for handouts and whining about problems they didn't want to face. They didn't want conversation. They wanted obedience, delivered with a payment receipt. I looked at Mom's silence again. It wasn't the calming presence I hoped for. It felt like complicity. Maybe she was just tired, or maybe she didn't want to get involved. Either way, it left me alone in the crossfire. Finally, I tapped out a message. "I'm done. This isn't a family, it's a business. Keep your money and your guilt." I hit send and immediately left the group chat. That moment was weirdly freeing, almost like a breath I didn't realize I was holding. The screen went quiet, and suddenly, things felt different. I was angry, sure, but also sad, like maybe I'd lost something that could never come back. And oddly, I felt a flicker of relief, like stepping out of a storm even though the sky was still gray. The phone sat in my hand, buzzing a little, but no new messages. Just silence. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one waiting for an apology I knew wouldn't come. It started right after college. I landed a decent job, not amazing, but enough to start pulling my weight, or so I thought. At first, it felt good helping out. My parents and my siblings were all stretched thin. Rent, bills, groceries, you name it. I was the one with a paycheck now, so I just stepped in. I wanted to help. It was almost like I was finally part of the team, you know? Like I belonged somewhere that wasn't just my own struggle. But it didn't stay that way. The help became expected. Then, it became demanded. I remember the first time my dad asked me to pay for the internet bill. It was a small thing, nothing major, but the way he said it, like, "You've got a good job now, so it's only fair." I didn't argue. I just paid it. That was the pattern. I'd cover something, and the next month, something else would pop up. A car repair for my brother, a medical bill for my mom, extra food costs my sister racked up when she stayed home sick. I didn't mind at first. I wanted them to know they could lean on me. But something shifted. Each payment felt less like a favor and more like a weight around my neck. Every "thank you" came with a reminder of what I owed them, whether spoken out loud or just felt in the silence that followed. Like I was supposed to feel guilty if I didn't say yes the next time, or if I wanted to spend money on myself. I caught myself thinking twice before buying new shoes or going out with friends. Why waste money on me when their needs were piled so high? One morning, I got a text from my mom asking if I could cover some extra rent because her check bounced again. I stared at my bank app while my thumb hovered over the screen. I was tired, sure. Tired of being the family wallet and never the person who got to breathe easy. But I sent her the money anyway. Of course I did. Meantime, their attitude didn't really change. It was like I was permanently set to go pay this mode. No questions. No thanks beyond the usual words that never meant what I wanted them to. I started noticing how they talked about money around me. Sometimes almost careless, as if it wasn't real, because I'd cover the shortfall. I don't think they meant to be manipulative, not outright. It was just what they expected, and I kept feeding into it. I guess I resented that. I hated how my generosity got twisted into an unspoken contract. I mean, I wanted to help, but I didn't want to be owned by it, to feel like my worth was only counted in dollars and cents. When did it stop being love and start being leverage? Sometimes I confronted them. I told my dad that I was stretched thin too, politely at first. He shrugged it off, said, "You've got a job, you can handle it." It felt like the final word every time. No room for discussion. No room for me to say no. Looking back, I think a part of me saw it coming. Maybe I should have set boundaries early or held my ground once. But there was this weird mix of guilt and wanting to prove myself. Like if I didn't keep up, they'd stop depending on me, and maybe I'd lose them for good in some way. That hope kept me chained tighter. The more I paid, the less I felt free. It's like the money was a leash disguised as a lifeline. I was held hostage by my own generosity, and I didn't even realize how deep in until one night I sat alone in my empty apartment, counting the bills I had to pay just to keep things from falling apart back home. That night, I felt a sharp disappointment, not just at them, but at myself, for letting it go on this long, for thinking this was love or responsibility and not recognizing it creeping over me like a shadow. I was tired of being everyone's bank and no one's person. But even in that moment of clarity, I didn't know how to stop, because the silence that filled the space when I thought about saying no, that was worse than handing over another paycheck. I thought cutting them off would mean silence, just this quiet space where I could breathe without all the noise. But instead, my phone blew up like it was on fire. Text after text, like they were trying to drown me. Missed calls piling up, and then these voice notes, snarling, crying, pleading. It was chaos. I scrolled through them with my heart hammering in my chest. My sister's messages came first, angry and sharp. "You're so selfish," she wrote. "You think you're the only one hurting? You broke the family." Her voice notes were worse. I could hear the edge in her tone, the raw hurt I'd caused, but also this almost bitter disappointment. You don't get to just vanish when things get hard. We're family. It felt like a slap, the kind you don't see coming because you thought you were done getting hit. And then there was Mom. Her texts were different. They were softer, desperate. "Please, make peace," she begged. "This isn't you. You're better than this. We just want you back." Her voice notes trembled with quiet tears, this mix of sorrow and guilt that wrapped itself around me like a trap. I hated how they made me want to reach back, even as my head screamed at me to stay away. I stared at the screen, drowning in the flood of their words. The frustration was like a burning fist in my chest. They'd act like nothing happened, like I was the monster just pulling away for no good reason. But all I'd done was stop paying for their mess. Stop being the punching bag, the fixer, the emotional wallet. And suddenly, all the pressure I'd been under exploded inside me. Still, as much as I wanted to slam the phone shut, delete their numbers, block them, it wasn't so simple. Mom's voice made me wince, and damn it, I remembered the little kid I used to be, the one who clung to hope that this family could be something good. Maybe that's why the guilt crept in too. I felt terrible, like maybe I was the one who'd gone too far. Maybe if I gave in, responded, apologized, then the yelling would stop. Maybe the mess would get cleaned up. But every twinge of empathy felt like a weak spot, like a crack they could push through and drag me back inside. And yet the numbness was there, simmering beneath everything, a cold shield to keep me from falling apart. Because underneath all the noise and rage and pleading was silence too, the silence they left behind when things got ugly, when they let toxic things fester for years without changing a damn thing. I felt empty, worn thin. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I sat there, phone buzzing like a live wire in my hand, wondering how this had come to this. How I'd become the bad guy for finally stepping away. They kept calling me selfish, but I was just trying to save myself. I wanted peace, but instead I got a war of voices filling the quiet I'd begged for. I thought it was over. But then, the phone lit up again, and this time, it wasn't from them. After that last argument, I didn't say a word. I blocked the entire family chat. My phone went silent like I dropped off the earth. For a whole week, no messages, no calls. Just nothing. At first, it was relief, honestly. I barely wanted to hear them, let alone talk. The quieter it got, the more I could think without the usual pressure gnawing at me. But then, about 7 days later, this ping came from my sister's number. Just her name, No group this time. Hey, how do I pay for my car insurance with you? Just like that. No explanation, no apology, no hey, maybe we should talk things through. Nothing. But suddenly, that question shifted everything. Out of the blue, she needed me, and that meant something. I stared at the message a minute longer than I should have. The payment thing, I'd been managing most of that stuff for the family account. It slipped in quietly, but I guess without me, some things start to fall apart. Funny, right? How fast I went from their selfish, which to the essential one holding the strings. I typed back, cool and calm. You can send me the info, I'll take care of it tomorrow. No rush, no snark, because I didn't want to give that away. Control felt good. The silence had been my escape, but now it was like a chess game. I knew they needed me, but they didn't realize that meant I had the upper hand. I wasn't going to yell or beg, just lean back and wait for the next move. That shift in power? Quietly empowering. She replied almost immediately, sending over some details for the insurer, the payment plan, all that. I could almost hear her biting back whatever she wanted to say. The fact that she reached out like this, it undercut all that anger the rest of the family had thrown at me earlier. They wanted me to be the problem, the person who didn't care, but here she was, coming to me because she needed help. I sat there, phone in hand. I felt a little pang deep inside. Yeah, it was sad how it had come to this. How maybe things were broken enough that she couldn't even ask for help without some kind of barrier between us. But underneath that sadness, there was this small spark, something like relief, or maybe even pride. I wasn't invisible. I mattered. Power felt like a quiet thing that seeped into every tiny move I made now. I sent the payment off the next day, texted a quick done just to close the loop. No celebrations, no offers for more than what she asked. I wasn't there to fix everything, just to remind them they couldn't push me entirely out. And I saw it in her last message. Thank you. Maybe, but also something like respect. We didn't say it, but it was there. I kept the family chat blocked. Not ready to jump back in. Not until this imbalance settled. And maybe that was the point. I needed to take the space to breathe, to let the reality sink in. I wasn't just the screw-up or the selfish one anymore. I held some power here. Maybe they could deal with that. But the quiet wasn't peaceful. It was waiting for how this new game would play out. I wondered if they truly understood what it meant to need someone after pushing them away. I thought it was a kind of ending. But really, it was just the beginning of a different kind of fight. The phone rang again, but the number was different this time. I didn't recognize it. My heart didn't leap, didn't sink. Whatever hope I'd foolishly clung to was gone. When I answered, his voice was sharper than before, like he'd spent hours calculating what to say next. Apologize, he said. Nothing else. Just that single word, cold and clipped. I swallowed, trying not to let my voice shake. Apologize for what? You know exactly what. Family is about loyalty. You crossed a line. You owe me that. The thing is, I've sat here, replaying those words in my head dozens of times. Family is about loyalty. But that's what he told me only after he'd left me frozen in fear for years. He taught me loyalty, right after teaching me fear. Made sure I learned which side of the line I wasn't supposed to cross. And now, here he was, demanding an apology, acting like none of that ever existed. I didn't flinch this time. I met his expectation of me staring down the barrel of whatever he wanted to shove in my face. Loyalty isn't blind, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, calm even. It's earned, not forced with threats. There was silence on the other end, like he was struggling to pin down the words to hurt me back. I held the line. Maybe he wanted me to stumble, to beg for forgiveness, to drown in the guilt he always threw at me like it was ammunition. You don't get to define loyalty, he snapped after a beat. I'm your father. You owe me respect for everything I've done. His words hit the way they always did, a distorted mix of pride and entitlement. But this time I wasn't crumbling. I knew what he meant wasn't respect, it was control. And I'm done handing that over. I can respect you without swallowing your bullshit, I said quietly. You won't change that by twisting words or calling me disloyal. He barked something else, but I wasn't listening. I wasn't afraid anymore. I realized that the man who tried to build himself up as the head of the family couldn't hold up the weight of his own words. His definition of loyalty didn't include honesty or care or any of the things family should be. It included control, fear, and gaslighting. So much gaslighting. I could hear the frustration in his voice now, the cracks beneath the surface trying to hold together his image of authority. But to me, It was clear. His demands, his threats, they were less about family and more about clinging to power over someone who finally stopped bending. Maybe you should consider what loyalty really means. Not just what suits you, I told him, feeling surprisingly steady. Part of me hated that I had to be the one spelling it out, but I wasn't about to let him own the narrative. The line went quiet again, longer this time, before he hung up. No goodbye, no threat, just silence. I lowered the phone slowly, letting the quiet settle around me. There was a strange relief in the fading tension, like I'd finally drawn a line not just in words but in spirit. I didn't know if this would make him stop, or if he'd come back with more demands, but for the first time, I felt ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant standing alone. I thought it was over, but the silence that followed said otherwise. I remember the moment she showed up at the door like it was yesterday. No warning, no call, just her standing there, tears running down her cheeks, as if she'd been weeping for hours. The kind of crying that breaks your heart because it's not about you, or maybe it kind of is, but it's tangled in so much else you can't untangle it. I want you to know. He didn't mean it, she said right away, voice shaking, barely above a whisper. I stood there, holding the door frame because I felt my knees about to buckle. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to just shut that door and pretend this moment wasn't happening. But there she was, my mom, broken and desperate, still trying to fix something that broke long ago. She came inside after a pause. I hadn't invited her in, but she just stepped through. The silence between us felt heavy. She clutched her coat to her chest like it might protect her from what was coming. I know it sounds crazy, she started, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. But he didn't mean to. I swear. People say things when they're angry, things they don't mean. I looked at her, the way her eyes darted away when she said that, the quiver in her lips. She wanted me to understand, to believe her, to forgive. I can't stay stuck here, Mom, I said carefully, breathing in that sharp, bitter mix of her perfume and the faint scent of cigarette smoke on her clothes. I've been trying to keep the house bills paid, but it's not working. I want to help you get therapy instead. That's what you need, not me covering debts that are only making us both worse. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Therapy won't fix everything, she said, voice firmer than before. And I don't want your money. I don't want charity. We stood like that, tension thick between us. She looked so small, but stubborn too. I could feel my chest tightening, part sympathy, part frustration, and maybe a little resentment I didn't want to admit. I wanted to tell her that loving someone who hurts you, it doesn't make you weak, but that it doesn't have to chain you down either. Still, I held back, because I could see she'd fallen too far into this to hear it now. I'm not asking for charity, I said, softer. I'm asking because I want you to get better, because I still love you, even if what happened broke something between us. Her whole body shook. That same mix of tears and trembling that feels like a wild storm is building inside. She swallowed hard. I know you love me, she whispered. But sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it's just not enough. The edges of her words cut into me sharper than anything else. I wanted to close the door and fight for change, but I could see the pull of the past holding her back. She wanted comfort. I wanted change. We both left empty-handed. I stepped aside and let her go. The door clicked shut behind her, and for a long minute afterward, the house was so quiet I could almost hear my own broken breathing. Maybe if I'd said something else, things might be different. Maybe if I'd been stronger or held on harder. But standing there, watching her walk away, all I knew was the space between us was more than just distance. It was a barrier built on pain and love tangled up in ways I wasn't sure either of us could untangle now. They started telling people I abandoned them. Made it sound like I just disappeared one day, left them to rot. I heard the whispers at family gatherings, caught the looks from relatives who didn't know the full story but assumed the worst because that's what they were fed. It was like I was already guilty without being asked. I'm not gonna lie, I felt that sharp stab of anger at first. How can they turn everything around like I'm the villain? But instead of trying to argue every single time, I kept quiet. I didn't want to get dragged back into old fights. The more they pushed the narrative, the more I realized they didn't care about the truth anymore. It was about who could control the story. So, I didn't raise my voice, I raised the receipts. Bank statements, money transfers, bills, even messages where I clearly said I was still sending help. I gathered everything. I printed copies and sent them to family members who were listening but uncertain. People who might have thought they should take one side without the facts. When I sent those, I wasn't expecting thank yous or apologies. Honestly, I didn't want them. What I wanted was control over my own story, my truth. The silence I got in return said more than any argument ever could. No one could actually deny the proof. The cold, quiet file spoke louder than gossip ever had. It felt strange, this shift, from feeling like I was scrambling to defend myself to having this quiet kind of power. I wasn't desperate anymore. I wasn't begging for understanding. I was just calmly showing facts. That distant part of me, the one that had been numb for a while, it was waking up. And with it came this pride that maybe, just maybe, I could claim back some dignity here. But it wasn't without bitterness. There's this running ache that your own family believes lies over what you did or didn't do. It stings harder because you want to trust them. You want them to have your back. And sometimes, realizing they don't, it's a punch to the gut. Even as I stood there with my proof laid out, I sensed the fracture that no amount of evidence could fix, the divide that had become too wide. It's like they chose silence not because they didn't hear me, but because they didn't want to hear me. And that hurt more than any accusation. Still, I wasn't going to keep drowning in that pain. I recognized that maybe this silence was a kind of freedom, too. A relief from trying to convince people who never really wanted to be convinced. I was finally untangling myself from that need for their acceptance, even if it felt cold and empty. I found myself leaning into the quiet, into the space where my truth could just exist without explanation or apology. The receipts were more than just paper, they were my boundary. My way of saying this is who I am, and I'm done arguing about it. But then came the moment that hit unexpectedly. A distant cousin, someone I hadn't talked to in years, reached out quietly. No judgment, no demands. Just a simple message. I see you. That small, almost invisible line of contact cracked open the silence in a way no argument ever could. I thought it was just my victory against the rumors, the cold facts settling into the silence. But that message made me wonder, was this really the end, or just the start of something else? I woke up that morning scrolling through my phone like I do every day, expecting the usual noise, memes, news, family group chat, drowning in passive-aggressive nonsense. But then I saw it. My sister had posted something on her Instagram story. She said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know the full story until now." That was it. No big speech, no justification, just a tiny apology buried between a puppy video and some influencer's coffee ritual. I stared at it, this tiny message carrying more weight than she probably realized. She never talked to me directly, never asked if I was okay or even if I wanted to talk. But somehow, this felt like the first honest thing she'd done in months. The family group chat blew up immediately. Some people called it a step in the right direction. Others said it was too little, too late. My dad, complete silence. Like he always does. He didn't comment publicly or privately. He just stayed quiet, as if silence could smooth over everything. Hearing my sister admit she didn't know the full story felt like vindication. Finally, someone outside of me acknowledging what I went through. But it wasn't the relief I thought it would be. Instead, it stung. Because the apology wasn't for me. It was a statement for everyone else to see. An insurance policy to save her relationships, her image. Apologies sound different when the Wi-Fi bill depends on them. I tried texting her. "Thanks," I wrote. "But did you ever want to hear it from me?" No reply. I probably shouldn't have expected one. She's always been the kind to choose the easier path. The silence from Dad felt like a wall between us. For years, I wanted him to say something. Anything. To acknowledge the mess we were in. But that silence never cracked. Maybe he thought speaking up would make things worse. Maybe he was scared. Or maybe he just didn't care enough. Still, the fact that my sister made a public apology, even a small one, meant the facade we all kept pretending was solid was starting to crack. It was a victory of sorts, but it didn't taste like it should. It was bittersweet. I sat there, scrolling through her message again, feeling tears press at the edge but not falling. I was proud that she'd said it, but sad that it took this long. Sad that I'm the only one who's really done all the heavy lifting, facing pain, digging it up, cleaning the wounds. I thought this would be the moment things changed between us, but it wasn't. It was just a shaky step, and the distance between us felt as wide as before. I realized acceptance isn't happy. It's just knowing you can't make someone truly see unless they want to. Later that night, I watched my phone buzz with new messages, people reaching out, wanting to support me. I read them half-heartedly, feeling numb. I wanted validation, but I didn't need the pity. The biggest surprise was when my sister commented under one of those messages, saying, "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." That was new, fragile, uncertain. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell her it's too late. Another part whispered that maybe this was a door opening, just a crack. I sat in the silence, phone in hand, hearing nothing from Dad, watching my sister's apology float out there, public but distant. I thought it was the end of something, but the quiet that followed felt heavier than before. The phone rang just after dinner, soft and kind of tentative. I looked at the screen, and it was him, my dad. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me swipe it anyway. His voice was low, quieter than I'd heard in years. "Hey," he said, like he wasn't sure what to say next. I didn't say anything back right away. I just listened. It was strange, hearing that quiet version of him. No yelling, no anger exploding through the line. Just a voice that sounded tired. "I might have gone too far," he said after a pause. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly. More like an admission, hanging there between us like something fragile. It caught me off guard. Of course, I wanted to respond, to say I forgave him or that I was over it. But I didn't. I didn't want to pretend that words could fix all the damage or that anything was simple now. So, I finally said, careful not to sound cold, "What's this about?" There was another quiet moment, almost like he was gathering himself. "Look, I'm not here to fight. I'm trying to give you space. Just wanted to say that. Maybe I should have done that a long time ago." I didn't know what to say. Relief brushed over me quietly, without making a fuss. It felt peaceful in a way I hadn't expected. For once, he didn't shout. For once, I didn't care. We traded a few more words, kind of awkward, but honest. Nothing heavy or forced. Just two people trying to fill the silence with something real. He asked if I was okay. I told him I was. Not the whole truth, but enough. I didn't promise to call back or fix anything. I didn't have to. The weight that had crushed me for months was still there, but it felt different now, like a shadow that stayed where it belonged, outside the door. I was no longer fighting him to prove something or begging for his approval. I was just free. He said he understood and that he'd respect whatever I wanted. The line went quiet, soft breaths between us. Then he said, almost like a question, "Are you okay?" again. And I said, "Yeah." We hung up, and the silence that filled the room was something I hadn't felt in a long time. Calm, steady mind. I sat there for a while, my hand still on the phone. The anger was gone. The fear, too. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, not that yet. But it was peace. And maybe, for now, that was enough. The family chat is still muted. I haven't looked at those messages in weeks. Not because they stopped coming, but because I stopped needing to. I remember the last time I glanced at it. The screen filled with demands and snark, the endless back and forth I learned to dread. Now it's quiet, and oddly, it feels like I'm breathing again. I pay my own bills these days. It's funny, when I was in the thick of all that chaos, splitting expenses, covering for people's temporary, tight spots, I thought I was holding things together. Like if I didn't keep the money flowing, everything would fall apart. But now, with just my own name on the lease and the electricity bills, I sleep a little deeper. The quiet apartment lets me rest without the weight of other people's emergencies pressing down on me. It wasn't easy cutting those ties. There's this weird mix of guilt and relief, like I'm both abandoning them and finally taking care of myself at the same time. The last time I sent money, I felt stuck, like I was paying for noise I didn't want to hear anymore. I guess I was. I used to pay for peace. Turns out peace was free. I just had to stop funding the noise. I keep the phone on silent now. When it buzzes, it's usually for me. Work stuff, a friend checking in. No urgent family messages demanding quick replies or apologies I'm too tired to make. I click over to the group chat every so often, out of some leftover habit, see that little bubble of unread notifications stacking up, and then swipe it away. Nothing's changed from their side. They probably think I'm avoiding them. Maybe I am. Or maybe, for once, I'm just choosing where to put my energy. Even if there's that sting, because I do miss the idea of family, it's quieter inside my head. I don't wake up replaying arguments or wondering if I did enough to patch the cracks. I'm proud I finally stopped equating sacrifice with love, even if it took me too long to figure that out. Sometimes I catch myself feeling almost at peace. Not loud or fixated on what's wrong, just present. Tonight, I sat in the dark watching the streetlights flicker through the window. No demands. No one pulling me into their chaos. Just me, my small space, and a quiet that finally feels safe. I wasn't expecting to feel so relieved, or that pride would sneak in there, soft and steady. Like maybe I did deserve some calm after all. I still wrestle with the quiet sometimes. Wonder if I should reach out, fix something, make things right. But then I realize I don't owe them that up front. Not this time. I'm here, but under my own terms. I'm done paying for peace. I'm living it, free for once. And yet, even as I say that, there's this flicker. Like maybe the silence this time is less about calm and more about a wall I'm too scared to cross back over. The phone stays silent tonight, the chat unopened. I think I'm okay with that. But I'm not sure if that's peace, or just the quiet before the next storm.